Hello. I'm hoping I can, I'm live. So seeing this screenshot, please let me know if you can see my screen, because we won't be seeing me tonight, hopefully, for your sake. Okay, so before I get started, I'll answer one of the questions that we've got popped up in our chat box here today about what do we get for this webinar. So basically, this webinar is free for you to watch at any time. So it'll all be there. What I will do though is the slides are on PDF. So I will be putting the PDF of the slides up underneath the webinar box on this same URL after this point. So you will be able to re-watch me talking about the slides, plus you can get a PDF copy of the slides as well. Cool. So I am so glad that you are here. Tonight is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and probably one that you're itching to hear. And it's all about ending the mealtime battles and getting to the point of having happy mealtimes. So what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about me. So I'm Simone, the owner of Play with Food. In terms of my background, I'm a food technologist by trade, a master's in food studies, and then I have gone into children's nutrition and studied in feeding therapy. The feeding therapy studies I've done, it's called SOS feeding therapy, which means sequential oral sequencing. It's all about the whole child. Looking at the psychology, the oral motor, the sensory, the jobs at hand when it comes to eating, and mostly the developmental, what's your normal developmental part. So as part of the feeding therapy background and the classes that I've run, I've come up with my Play with Food routines, and it's very similar to the SOS feeding therapy base. But what I like is that the routines that I have here for tonight are all things that you can take home and do yourself. Okay, so if you do log in live tonight, you will see a chat box available. Feel free to chat away in the chat box and I'll be able to see that as we go. That lets me know I'm not talking to nobody. Okay, so when I've come up with the routines, I'll go through the next part. It's all based on this holistic view of the whole family mealtime. So I have basically 4 parts to how you should run a meal, especially if you've got fussy eaters or children who are at different energy levels or their focus is all over the place, and getting everyone at the dinner time seems to be quite hectic and there's a lot of stress, or we kind of start off at the wrong foot every time and we think, why is it that every night I am fighting this battle? Why is it a mealtime battle? So what we're taking it back to is going back to looking at what's the lead up to dinner like. So I'm talking a little bit about exercises and the activities kids are doing before they get to the dinner table, having a getting ready to eat routine. Also what should happen or what could happen in the mealtime. So I'll be talking a lot about positive eating cues, things that work for you at the mealtime. So even though I'll give you examples, what I want you to do is have your Happy Mealtimes worksheet there in front of you, and I want you to jot down things that you could do, because things that I like to do might not be something you want to do at all, but you might have some really great ideas. The reason for these routines is based on a scientific model, but obviously how you interpret them and use it to your advantage is how you get to happy mealtimes and your family. And I also will talk a little bit about a cleanup routine and how important sort of ending the meal is with the kids. I also included in module 3, which came out to you on Monday, a PDF of the steps to eating hierarchy. If you haven't printed that out yet, I really urge you to print it out and have a look at it. And I'll talk about that as we go. That's a copyright document, so that's why it came to you on a PDF unchanged with the copyright notice at the bottom. Based on my training, Dr. Kay Toomey developed the model, and it's a really good little visual tool for you to keep handy, just to refer back to every now and then and go, okay, where are we at with different foods? And like I said in the module, each food goes along that hierarchy at its own pace. So something that a child might sit and poke for maybe 6 months could slowly move up that chain, whereas something that they may never have seen before eaten straight away. Which is average, it takes 15 goes to eat a new food. That is an average. So to help you, I think looking at that tool will really help you see what things are doing what along that chain, because some foods will be bringing that average down, and others will be making that average up higher. And especially every child is different as well on top of that. So the tool is really good for visualizing it and helps you come to grips when you kind of hear this, oh, did you try it 15 times? And you're like, you're not going to sit there and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 each and every time, because not every food is exactly 15. Okay. All right. So I will also be talking at the end of the webinar tonight about outside of mealtime play with food opportunities, because we have our scheduled meal times, but that's not the only time food is part of our daily conversation, part of our daily life. We are planning food, we're talking about it, we're shopping for it. There's so many other outside of mealtime opportunities to bring up food, and sort of the things we could do outside of mealtimes and what we can do inside of mealtimes. And you might find you'd be able to come up with a list of things that you can try. Okay, so let's get into it. Proprioceptive input. Okay, so this is all related to that very first point on the first screen, is what are we doing before we even think about going to the dinner table? Kids really need to have their sensory systems all engaged. And as you would have read about in the very first part of Module 3, we talked about normal childhood development and the leaps that they do, their cognitive leaps. So they'll move from sensory motor thinking and cognitive level through to a pre-operational level. So when we go through that leap, that'll usually happen at around 2. Most kids start at sort of 18 months. So you'll find maybe what was typically a really great eater up until about 18 months starts going off food, starts to do all these things. And you think, what have I done wrong? And it's actually nothing to do with you. So you take that step back. And again, we talked about that last week when we had the webinar. When you think, oh, what did I do? Take that away. It's not about you. Think about it. It's all about your kid. And that's going to help you a lot if you can think about the eating competence journey that you have and your children have, and how it is a separate thing. It's not an entity. You don't cause your children's eating patterns in its entirety, but you can help them. Okay, so our seemingly good eater that's turned into quite a fussy, picky, maybe tantruming child is... Oh, okay. Oh, all right, Christy. Thanks for letting me know about it not being in focus. I probably won't be able to do much about that, other than give you copies of the handout, because it could be the internet connection being a bit slow and it's making it a bit fuzzy. Yeah. Okay. And that would be my internet connection. So where was I? About proprioceptive input. So this is part of our sensory system. So proprioceptive input comes from the sensations we get in our joints, our muscles, our connective tissues, that let us know where our body is. So when we step up onto something, we know how hard to put our foot down. Those those sort of sensory signals are all part of our proprioceptive input. And we can get more proprioceptive input and get that feedback system working more by doing things like lifting, pushing, pulling heavy objects, and even including one's own weight. I've got a little link of where you can read more about this proprioceptive system there for you, because it's such a fascinating thing to learn about how humans work effectively, and also why this actually impacts how they're going to approach any task thereafter. So you might be familiar with things like kinetic learning, where kids are moving while they're learning things and stuff. We're trying to build a whole lot of feedback loops into children with their sensory systems, and all of this helps us build pathways in the brain. There's so much information about neuroplasticity out there now. So what I love about proprioceptive input is it doesn't have to be expensive. Like trampolines work really well, climbing frames work really well, going to the park works really well, but it can be as simple as pushing their own weight against a wall. So one thing I love to do with the kids is to pretend we're going to push the walls over. We're pushing as hard as we can, so we're really connecting in through those joints, doing a lot of we are doing a lot of that sort of exercise. So by pushing up against the wall and trying to use as much of their body into it, so really getting even into the calves and things like that, we're getting a lot of that input happening. And you can do that as long as you've got walls in your house. Okay, so you don't need a lot of money to do proprioceptive input, is what I'm saying. One mum that I had a son who loved to, he would push her up the hallway. I don't know how safe that is. You'd have to work out the logistics of it before dinner. And that was his way to get a whole lot of that proprioceptive input. So why is it important for eating? This is the system that gives us back all this information about what we're doing. It's a great way to reset us and get ready for the tasks that are at hand. We're getting lots of messages back and forth into our brain, and especially if we've come from all sorts of different activities. Yeah, so if we've been maybe on a long drive where we've been sitting still for a while, so say we're doing the trip home from daycare, it's been a long day, and we've just sat in the car for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we bring them in and then we sit them at the table ready for dinner, their energy levels are not going to be there. They've had no proprioceptive input during that time. They're going to be a lot less receptive to new stimuli at that point. So we're getting the sensory system ready for something new, ready for a new task, effectively. So what I want you to do now is maybe jot down a couple of ideas of how you could do proprioceptive input at home. Okay, so the next thing that we've done, all right, is a kind of get ready to eat routine. So this is where we set the table, we actually start focusing in on that eating area. So what I've done is I've put a little picture here of some tools that you might like to set your table with. Some of these might not look the most conventional tools, but if I had a fussy eater, and definitely when my girls do go through their fussy eating days and phases, or a particular meal where I'm like, okay, there's a lot more new stuff coming, this is what I will give them. Everyone at the table would get a wet hand washer. We want children to be in control of their own cleaning. This is a positive eating cue for them. So when we do a positive action as a child, or even as an adult, what we would like is some positive reinforcement for it. So the positive act of eating, a positive reinforcement would be that feeling of filling up their stomach and knowing that they're getting full, and that's a great internal positive reinforcement. We don't necessarily need a lot of extra praise and external reinforcement, if you get what I mean, but what we would love mostly for parents to understand is just to try and avoid negative reinforcement. So when I say being able to clean themselves up from early on, and I know I was guilty of it with my first child, we would give them a spoon of food, and then very soon after, scrape that metal spoon right back up their chin to get that food back into their mouth. So the positive act of eating was then rewarded with quite a negative association. And don't get me wrong, I do it. It's ingrained in us. It's so frustrating because once I knew that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it is. It's a negative basically direct association of something that they've just done that we're really happy that they've just done. So what I'd love to do is I love to give the kids a little bit more control, because then they can clean themselves up, and we're not going to get to the point where they're afraid of getting messy or they're afraid of doing things, because they've got that reassurance that when they're dirty, they can clean themselves up. So during the SOS training, Dr. Kay Toomey was the child psychologist who gave us all the information and trained us. She said from as early as 10 months, children can take their own washer and wash themselves. And I was pregnant at the time when I was doing that training, and I definitely say with my second child, I could give her a washer at 10 months and she'd maybe use it. She knew how to use it. She is a sensory seeker, so she actually loves the feeling of having herself being totally messy, which can grate on people's nerves. But there's a lot of information about embracing mess, and I could go on about just that tangent for quite a long time, but I won't. I do have some good information on my website about embracing mess if you type in embrace mess into the search engine. Okay. The other things you'll notice here is I've got a nice big wide flat plate and it's empty. I have not preloaded the plate with food. And I have a learning bowl at the top. That's my little yellow bowl at the top. So if you've got your steps to eating hierarchy handy, you will see there's 32 steps. Okay, so in order for us to move a food up those steps, the children have to be able to work with it at their level. The first thing they need to do is be able to tolerate it in the room. So chances are we're probably not too bad a lot of the time. If your child is not tolerating any foods in the room, you're probably not on the right course. You will be needing to see a specialist. And I did go through that on module 3 with the red flags, what you should be looking for. If there's anything really extensively glaringly obvious on that list, let me know and I can put you in contact with a specialist as well. But yeah, if you're at the point where the child is happy to have it on the table but not necessarily want it on their plate, this is where your learning bowl comes in really handy, because you're letting your child interact with it about 30 centimeters away from them. If they're ever going to eat it, being 30 centimeters away from them is much, much, much better than never seeing it. So if we just assume, oh, my child is not going to eat broccoli, and they never see it, they never touch it, they never interact with it, even if it's 30 centimeters away, that is so much better than if they just, I go, oh, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to give it to them. It means that they won't ever be able to eat it if they're not given the chance to eat it. So your responsibility as a parent is to provide the foods and provide variety. And we will talk a lot about food wastage in the next few modules. You would have seen that as well. Okay, so the learning bowl here is above the plate. I love to have 2 little rhymes for these. My plate goes splat, splat. And part of my mantra is, okay, I'm one of my battles at dinner is we're not throwing food. It does not happen. And you have food. Doesn't get thrown, rather than in the nicest possible and scoldable voice without it being a overemphasis on it. It's just food stays on our plate and it's back on the plate. It might tear your hair out for a couple of days to get there, but rather than having food thrown forever in a day, having a bench learning bowl available for foods that aren't, and I'll get to that. See on my plate here is you will have a spoon, a fork, a knife. Give them a range of this drop. Is problems and that they are not going to want to use it. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to have a whole other world of issues. So obviously we don't want to injure children, but be aware that if we go too blunt or too chunky or funny, the rivet, children will be interested that they're meant to do. You know, they can have a do so that every meal if they need to. What's great about a cocktail fork is if the child's eating well, they should use they might be happy to use in the family style serving. So the cocktail, I would suggest a little pair of tongs per child, just to avoid the fights. This is another way to empower them, enable them, give them. Okay. Fingers crossed. So then time or the act of letting each family member serve themselves the food with a variety of utensils. So because we've set up our tables like this with our nice empty plates, we've put our food in the middle of the table. What I like to do here is the girls really do quick okay, just because this is starting to, I'm getting a lot of comments that I'm just trying to think what the best would be to do. Okay. I'm just trying to see what we've got. It's been for the last 5 minutes or so. What I might do is I'll end it now. And I'll send a quick message to say it'll be back online. We'll come back at 9. After 9 o'clock, my internet seems to get a little bit better. Okay, sorry about that. I will end it now and we'll come back at 9 o'clock.